Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. This would have been such a nice thing to have in every definition of nirvana. All those ridiculous ways nirvana is packaged and sold, right, to spiritual egos. If it was sold as what it really is, whoever loses your life will find it. Then you'd get the people who are actually interested. Right? Whoever finds his life, true life, actual life, real life, whoever's going to find their life is going to lose their life. To the mind, that's very confusing, right? To awakened consciousness, it's like it couldn't have possibly be put more concretely, more simply. It could not have possibly be put more beautifully. In order to find your life, you're going to lose your life. It couldn't have been put more clearly. When the seeker returns to its source, the seeker is extinguished. The seeker does not become enlightened. The ego that's looking for enlightenment isn't what becomes enlightened. You wake up from the seeker, from the ego, from the me. Enlightenment becomes enlightened. That's why I say a lot of times, it's going to be very disappointing to the seeker in you, because when enlightenment happens, it's not going to be for the seeker. You're going to wake up from the seeker. And so we lose that life. And I've never met anybody that's really truly awake who hasn't lost a great part of their life. And they're very happy for it. Mostly what they lose is what they thought life was. This pursuit of achievement and betterment and on and on and on and on. And we realize that that's death. That's not life at all. That's the life we lose. That's the self that we lose when we return. So whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will find it. And at the moment of losing yourself, the moment of losing yourself is the moment of finding yourself. Most people don't want to get lost, be bewildered, not know where they are. But that's what spirituality is about. When inquiry turns your mind back and you look at what am I really? What am I really? Not what somebody says I am, not what the books say I am, not even the holy teachers say I am. To find out for yourself, what am I really? What am I actually? Because clearly you see, if you've done this even for a short period of time, you see you're not your mind, you're not your thoughts. You see you're not what you feel. There's the seer that's beyond all that. And you look, what am I? What am I? What am I? What am I? And there's nothing there. Until you let yourself go so far into the unknown, into the nothing that's there. The nothing that's there wakes up. You are the nothing that's there. Nothing is a word I use instead of formlessness. Right? Because the mind likes formless. Everybody wants to be formless. To the mind, ooh, I'll be formless. That sounds very good. I'll be a formless ego. But nothingness is a little more intimidating, isn't it? Yeah, and it's much more like the real thing. It's the nothing that wakes up, only to find out later that the nothing is everything. The nothing is the self itself. No shape, no form. And so in this story is not necessarily simply the story of somebody who lived 2,000 years ago. It may have been the story of someone who lived 2,000 years ago. But when you get what the story's about, you realize the story is about you. It's the journey that you are on. It's your story. It's about you. Your true nature. As Jesus said, you are the light of the world. This is about you. This is an announcement of yourself in its true sense, your journey. This is put into such glaring, obvious terms that it's amazing that we miss it. This is the story of consciousness waking up. And throughout the entire story, this unified consciousness of the One is constantly being referred to, constantly being pointed at. And that's what makes it so intriguing. And yet in the midst of all of this, there's also a human journey that's happening, right? There's the Jesus part of the story. There's a very human person that's going through all this. Right up till the very end. When Jesus, the Son of God, which is you, daughter of God, which is you, when you realize your nature, you're it. But the Son of God, right up to the end, the human nature in him, when he's realizing his ultimate destiny, what he is going to go through, right? He is going to get up on that cross, and he is going to be killed, and he is going to be crucified, and that's his destiny. That's the reason he was born. That's what he came for, right? Hello, awaken to full self-realization. Welcome to enlightenment. This is your destiny. How many want to sign up? Because you never know what your destiny will be, do you? It might be wonderful. It might be to be surrounded by beauty and lovely things and beautiful experiences and lots of nice stuff. And it might be to be crucified. Whatever's going to serve the purpose of spirit. And of course, what did the human nature do? As some of you have heard me say, I think this is one of the most honest moments in all of spiritual literature. When Jesus realizes as a foretelling that what's going to happen to him, that he's going to die and be crucified, and he says, please, Father, please take this cup from my lips. Basically says, please let me out of this. Don't make me go through this. That's the human nature talking. And the beauty of this, that in almost all spiritual literature, the human nature is always edited out. I have no idea how it got into the Bible. It must have been somebody's slip-up, someone's mistake, to allow the human nature to get in there. But it was actually the salvation of the whole thing, because it connects right in with the deepest truth. That there is a human nature, and the human nature, even in the fully realized person, right when he's realized what's going to happen, says, can I get out of this, please? And then the next thing that happens is what? Thy will be done. I commend my spirit unto thee. Now there's the Christ, the human nature, and then the next thought, the next thing that comes to him is, thy will be done. And that's the Christ nature. That's the truth. That's the unified one. That's the one that is a direct reflection of what he said his whole life was about. I have not come here to do my will, but the will of him who sent me. That's the self-realized being. And this story is a beautiful marriage of these two aspects. It's not self-realized instead of human, it's self-realized appearing as human. And the beauty of the story is throughout the story you see self-realized appearing as human being. But always, at each decisive moment, the self wins out. At each decisive moment, the self wins out. The divine will wins out. It wins out at the very end, and it wins out many times during the story when he's tempted by the so-called devil in the desert, and once again the divine will wins out. The human will does not win out. Which is actually also a very significant part of the story, because the more we wake up, the more powerful we become. That's what comes with the territory. That's why in most forms of spirituality until very recently, the deepest teachings were not given to people. They were hidden. You had to go through tremendous hardships and dedicate your life and completely give over your life basically just to get access to the kinds of teachings that you can read at the bookstore around the corner for $8.95. Now why did they do that for so many centuries? Why were the direct teachings hidden for so long? And you see, it's because those who have awoken know that part of awakening, you run into a lot of powers. You become a very powerful being. You may not look like it. You may look very ordinary. Nobody may know it. In fact, I would say it's better that way. You don't get bothered as much. But there's a danger in those powers, right? Because if there's anything left in you, if the ego is going to love those powers. The ego loves power, right? In all its forms, ego loves power. And so these teachings were hidden because these realized beings knew from the very beginning that if someone woke up to some extent enough to start to be infused with this incredible radiance and the power that comes with it, and the self-affirmation, if there's anything left of the ego, it tends to be to try to use that power. And so at every point in this beautiful story, you see that the Jesus part of his nature, at each critical moment, is actually giving power back to the self. The self gets to dictate what's going to happen, right up to the critical moment where even the self is going to let the self crucify him. That's the real sermon. That's the real thing. Of course, all this can sound somewhat intimidating when it's all out in the open, which is what the beautiful story of the Jesus story does. It puts everything out in the open, puts it right out there on the table for one to be seen. Everything's kind of laid right out there for anybody with the eyes to see it. You see that everything about awakening, the whole process, everything that you're going to go through is actually right there in the story, right? In such an obvious way, it's amazing that you, only in retrospect, you wonder, how on earth did I ever miss it? Just like in all the times when I was in training with my teacher in Zen, and we would chant the Heart Sutra, and right at the beginning the Heart Sutra would say, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And I would think, what does that mean? That must be a secret inner teaching. That must be very abstract. Form is emptiness and emptiness was form. That's not concrete, I thought. That's not a direct teaching. That's a philosophical abstraction that I'm supposed to somehow figure out. And then, like anybody who's awoken to their nature, as soon as you've awoken to your nature, in the snap of a finger, you hit your head and go, how could I have missed it? Of course, form is emptiness. I'm form, but I'm empty. I'm formless. I appear as form, but I'm the formless. The one and only. Pure consciousness. And pure consciousness manifests as every form that you can see. Everything is your own self. Everything's an expression of your own nature. Nothing could be more simple. But before the moment you see, it seems very abstract, doesn't it? And as soon as we see, it's not abstract. And you notice every part of Jesus' teaching, there is no future in them. If you listen to the languages he's talking about, his language is very immediate. It's very much now. It's very much in the moment. If you really can feel it, you feel this energy coming through it that's basically saying, people, open your eyes now. not tomorrow. Don't approach opening your eyes. Don't work towards it now. You are the light of the world. And the only thing that separates you from seeing that, from awakening, is a thought. That's it. That's the only separation. You believe yourself to be something you're not, or you believe that it's difficult, or you believe something. Heck, you believe anything. There's a wonderful line I just read in some book that actually had nothing to do with Carl Jung, but there's a quote from him in there, and it was near the end of his life, and someone asked him in an interview, they said, "So do you believe in God?" And Carl Jung said, "I do not believe in God. I know God." And this is the statement of when we actually realize our nature. Belief is no longer an option. We don't need to believe anything. We only believe in things that we don't know are true. When we realize the truth, belief is irrelevant. Belief is like training wheels. It's what makes egos feel stable. Take their beliefs away and they get very testy. Threaten their beliefs and they get more testy. They might even go to war. And so through whatever means, this is a simple turning awareness back upon itself. And what's necessary to sacrifice is everything. It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. And what makes us rich is not the dollars in our pockets, and it's not how big our houses are, and it's not whether we own a Mercedes or a VW. That has nothing to do with richness, not spiritual richness. What this is talking about, the rich man who cannot get into heaven is the one who's rich in their ideas, in their beliefs, in their fixed point of view. It's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. It's pretty difficult. You think a camel's going to get through an eye of a needle? Right? But a lot easier than a rich person getting into heaven. As the third patriarch of Zen said, one thought sets heaven and earth infinitely apart. And I would say, one thought believed sets heaven and earth infinitely apart. One thought believed. When we let go of it all, we are in the unknown. As the most frightening place for the ego to be, in the unknown. No security, no belief to hold on to, no assurances, nothing there. And yet that's where consciousness is inextricably being invited to. That's where yearning will ultimately take everybody. It's unavoidable. All beings in the end wake up. It's the only sure thing in the universe. The only sure thing. Everybody wakes up. And everybody wakes up in spite of themselves. Not because of themselves. In spite of themselves. Most people will not let go of their beliefs until life gets so painful that they have no option. But of course it's so unnecessary to get to a point where life becomes so painful that we're willing to let go of our beliefs because there's no other option. We can just as easily let go of them right now. You see, and there is a sacredness. It's already inside. It's all around. It's everywhere. Inside, outside, over here, over there. It is the place from where you are looking from. And yet it is so free, and it is so free of everything our minds believe and everything our minds think. It is already free. And therefore, as Jesus says, we become like children. Which means in this context not to become childish. That's a misinterpretation. To become like little children, to become innocent, to come into that heart of unknowing. Because in the space of not knowing, everything is possible. As long as we think we know, very little is possible. And so you follow that beautiful thread, returning your awareness back upon itself, into that place where the mind does not know, does not understand, does not comprehend. And you go into that place within yourself anyway. And it's in that unknown place that wakes up. Because the self to the mind is incomprehensible. That's why it is a pure mystery to the mind, because the mind cannot comprehend the self. Only the self comprehends itself. And that's the death. We die to everything we ever thought we were. It just dies. We see it's not really true. And miraculously, from that state of consciousness itself, that's the state of innocence. That is what it is to not be rich. That only nothing passes through the eye of the needle effortlessly.